Hey guys, it's Steve for CollectorMania here, doing another deck tech in our 32 series. Today I'm trying something a little bit different. This is a actually brand new deck. I started building it last week. It's Archangel Avacyn. This is my Boros deck. I did have another deck lined up for this. It was Allied Allies, so a pair of allies. And I figured you guys were probably getting bored of tribal decks, so I decided something a little bit different. I've been trying to build this deck for a long time. Boros is definitely one of those color pairs that I have struggled with a lot, and I think everybody has. It's definitely, they've been ramping it up a little bit with the newer commanders that they've been putting out. Like DePaul is pretty cool, especially, being able to grab some dwarves and stuff like that. But once again, I wanted to show you guys something not tribal this week since, the last 2 weeks have been tribal. So, Archangel Avacyn, she's an amazing commander. Any commander that has flash on it is pretty ridiculous. There's what, a handful, probably maybe like 5 or something legendary creatures that have flash on them. Maybe even less. I can't remember the exact. The fact that she also ends up being 2 colors is really cool. I know that mono white commander can sometimes get a little bit arduous. A lot of people built that deck and it almost runs into the same pitfalls as Boros does. But with the increase of red's power over the couple of years that have gone by, I think this is much more viable now. So with that, let's kind of break into the deck here. We're going to go into our mana fix, mana ramp section here. With any of these types of decks that don't have green in them, you definitely want to focus on getting your mana up, through rocks or through. There's a few ways in white that you can kind of cheat a little bit, which is kind of cool. Highlights, Command Sphere is definitely a big one. I know I've talked about this card a million times, but being able to play a mana rock early game and then sacrifice it to draw a card later is invaluable to me. It just makes a lot of sense. You might as well have something that's dual purpose. And with that, we've got our usual suspects like Boros Signets. I threw a Mana Vault in here. Soul Ring's a big one, of course. As you'll see as we get further into the deck, there's a huge colorless theme. So in a way, you could actually think of this as a tricolor deck, because colorless does definitely make an impact here. With that, we've got a really good fixer here with some of our instant speed stuff with Braid of Fire. I've been trying to use this card forever in a deck. It's just a wacky enchantment. I picked it up a long time ago, and I keep putting it in things and keep taking it out just because it doesn't do enough. But I think here, with my commander being instant speed, where I could flash it in the beginning of my turn, stuff like that, it could be pretty cool. Plus, there's a few spells that we'll get into, instant speed spells, that could be pretty impactful with it. So, also kind of touching on the mono white kind of cheat mana into kind of play thing. Well, not into play, but kind of filter your lands. Weather Wayfarer. This is another card that I've never actually played with, so it should be interesting. I'm interested to try it out. I know a lot of people have suggested it to me over the years, and I've just never felt like spending the $8 or whatever so to get it. Pretty interesting creature though. So yeah, we'll give it a try. And then kind of touching on the colorless thing again, we've got an Eldrazi Temple in here, and you'll see why in a little bit. It's the best way, obviously, to get the 2 colorless mana to cast some of my bigger Eldrazi's that require it, and it's also a good way to activate some of the abilities that you'll see as well. There's also a single waste in here. That way, if I play my Evolving Wilds or have my Weather Wayfarer, I can actually find it. With that, we'll move on to the next section here, which is card draw. You know me, I love card draw. Mind's Eye always comes to mind in these types of decks. It's probably the most efficient way to kind of just throw something in and have it work. Because I know that Staff of Nin could probably be fit in here too, but Staff of Nin, pretty cool card. I probably would include it in here if I had an extra one. But Mind's Eye, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's just a highlight. It definitely will draw you the cards that you need. It scales with your opponents too, which is nice. So if somebody has a Consecrated Sphinx, if you have enough mana, you can keep up with them. But you're just kind of making a cycle at that point where you'll draw a card, they'll draw 2 cards, then you'll draw a card, then they'll draw 2 cards. So, but you can go until you find an answer for their Consecrated Sphinx as well. So if you think about it that way. And then we've got another favorite of mine in Combustible Gearhulk. This card is crazy good. I know that we talked about it in our Mono Red Summit videos a lot too, but it's probably my favorite Gearhulk. I know a lot of people are stuck on the Torrential one, which is a big standard playable one, but I think this guy, in my opinion, is probably my favorite for EDH. Right in front of Noxious Gearhulk, in my opinion. Both pretty good though. Then we've got a include that I pretty much throw in any artifact / colorless deck, and that's Deal Broker. This guy is, it's a, you know, a colorless merfolk looter guy. You know, it does all that I need it to do, especially in a deck like this where, you know, I could have a land sitting in my hand forever and just not need it, and then just, you know, wheel it with deck or Deal Broker and find what I need. So pretty cool, easy to cast. I can get it out there quick, even if I'm stuck on one color of mana. This will usually help me find my other color of mana. And some of these conspiracy cards are just amazing. And then we've got Endbringer. This is one of the Eldrazi I was talking about earlier. This is honestly the reason why I decided to throw a lot of colorless in here. Endbringer is sort of my staff of Nin in this deck. It's an amazing card that I have yet to really utilize outside of like my colorless deck or my artifact heavy decks. It does a lot for essentially 6 mana. I mean, it has 3 activated abilities. It can ping opponents. It can stop opponents from attacking or blocking. I think attacking and blocking. I never actually used that one, so I have a hard time remembering. And then it also can tap 2, or you can tap 2 colorless mana and tap it and draw a card. Like, it does a ton for 6 mana. The only restriction being that to activate those abilities, you do have to have the colorless mana symbol. So there is that, or generic mana, you know what I mean. Which is a big reason why, once again, Eldrazi Temple, and there's a lot of colorless mana rocks in here. Okay, and then, you know, along those same lines, we've got Kozlak. This is another one of my favorites of the Eldrazi. It comes in, draws you a whole bunch of cards, and then it has a effect essentially that says if you discard a card equal to the card that's being cast on your opponent, well, anybody's side, same converted mana cost, you can counter that spell. So that's pretty powerful, especially, you know, people aren't expecting it from you at all. I find that pairing this with Deal Broker is amazing, or Sensei's Divining Top, because then you can, you know, look at the top 3, top swap if you need to, counter something if you need to. I've countered many a Wrath of Gods with this card, and it definitely does work. And then let's see, kind of the last little highlight on our card draw section here is Chandra Flamecaller. This is probably one of my favorite iterations of Chandra. Well, it is my favorite iteration of Chandra. You know, even with the new crazy awesome one in Standard. This card, its wheel effect is ridiculous. The fact that it draws you up 1 card is also amazing. It comes with a board wipe. It makes tokens. Like, this card is crazy. So I don't know. I recommend it to everybody. And then let's see. After that, we're going to move on to our recursion section here. It's kind of recursion light. There's really not a whole lot that I wanted to do in here recursion wise, because there's a few cards in the deck that actually fight against like strategies like that, and we'll kind of see those in a little bit. But a big one is Felled into the Third Path. It doesn't directly bring a creature from your graveyard back into play, which is something that was key here. It actually just makes a copy of it, which is nice. So it doesn't really affect what I'm doing on the other side here. It's an underplayed card in my opinion. Not a lot of people play it. It could be definitely see a lot more play. I'm actually really thinking about building this guy on his own. I honestly don't need more mono red decks at this point, but it could be something if I just, you know, have a wild hair one day, I might just build it up. We'll see. It's another of those cards that, I don't know, just activated ability that's just awesome. I like it. And then another one that I just picked up recently, Loyal Retainers. This card's crazy cool. I got the Invocation version of it, which, you know, is probably the only version I could find for quite a while, unless I went online or whatever. But the store that I go to, CollectorMania, of course, happened to have one, so I picked it up really quick, and I have yet to try it out. I know from a lot of people that have told me this card is ridiculously amazing, so we'll try it out for sure. And then with that, you know, the rest of the recursion is kind of like your usual suspects. We've got Sun Titan. I put Elixir of Mortality in this section because essentially that's kind of what it is. It gets your graveyard back to your library so you can use it again. Face Reward is a big one with Aurelia. You know, like if she flips and not on your turn that you throw her in to make everything indestructible, then you can usually use the Fate's Reward to bring back your creatures or whatever, you know. There's a few other reasons why that might be useful as well. The next section here is Disruption. There's quite a few things I threw in here to kind of like, not really be stacksy, but just to kind of slow my opponents down and keep them in pace with me. Because once again, like going up against green decks with not green can be a little tedious sometimes. You know, your usual suspects like Aven Mind Sensor, Containment Priest is kind of what I was talking about with the recursion. A big one, a new one, is the Harsh Mentor. I know we've touched on this before, but this guy, I think it's going to be insane in this deck. There are a lot of activated abilities in EDH, and just being able to ping somebody for 2 each time they try and do it, it will be amazing. It's probably one of my favorite cards from Mom and Cat, so there's that. Thundersong Trumpeter is kind of an interesting one that I threw in there that I've never actually paid attention to. It's a miniature Boros battle mage, the Minotaur guy. I can't remember what his name is exactly, but he does a similar effect, which essentially makes one of their creatures attack or block. This guy's a little bit different. It can either stop a creature from attacking or make a creature attack, which can be pretty useful. So like if they have, something that they can't necessarily tap, like I don't know, it's an example like a Seaborn Muse, like make them have to attack with it. That way you can block or whatever, unless they have a way to kind of get around that. But, could be a lot of fun. But the big key thing here is making something not able to, I think is it attack or block? Sorry, I'm mixing up something here.
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Can't attack or block.
It's another new card, so I'm trying it out. So anyway, cool stuff. Then we've got, Thalia is a really big one. Dual Caster Mage, just to like snag somebody's really cool spell that they're casting at you. Linvala, Keeper of Silence, is a huge one. Like I picked up this card in a trade from a buddy a long time ago, Eric actually. And I have not regretted it ever since. I've put it in so many different decks. I wish I had more copies of it, but its price tag is just ridiculous, but it's awesome. It's a ridiculously awesome card. Another new card that I'm trying out from the Amonkhet set is Watchers of the Dead. It is a kind of graveyard. Well, it is a graveyard hate card. Bleh, got tied up there. I don't know if I should be running it over anything like Relic or stuff like that, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. I like to sometimes experiment with new cards and see what happens. This being a creature on the board could be kind of interesting. I don't know. That way, I could use, if I somehow get it to my graveyard, I can use Felden to just keep, bringing it back and then sacrificing it at the end of turn and then just, nuke everybody's graveyard pretty much every turn, which could be good. There's some other things that I could try out with it, but we'll see how it goes. Another one that I kind of really like that is definitely interesting is Wild Ricochet. I actually took out Fork because I put this in here. It seems just a little bit more interesting in this deck. It's just being able to grab somebody's spell, make it yours, and then make a copy of it. That's huge, especially if we're playing like a instant speed kind of focused deck. With that, I think the last one I kind of wanted to touch on was Homeward Path. A lot of people should run this in a lot of decks, as we've mentioned before. I think I have 5 copies of it at this point, so I have it kind of sparingly throughout my decks, but the decks that I have it in, I've pretty much always used it, so there's definitely a point to having it. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to our protection / mass removal. I kind of lumped these together just because I didn't want to make a million sections, essentially. A big one is Angel of Dire Hour. I love this card. It is the white Cyclonic Rift. It is ridiculous blowout on your side. You wait for somebody to swing out at you with their entire team and then you just exile all of them. That can be pretty game breaking, especially against some of these like graveyard centered decks where they're like waiting for like a Wrath, but they're not waiting for all their stuff to be exiled. That can really suck up that real bad. So and then usual suspects here again too, like Archon of Justice, like dies, you get to exile something. Bastion Protector is a really good one. Iroas is a really big one. This is more on the side of the protection side. It essentially stops your creatures from taking combat damage, which is really, really good. So a big one that we actually just did a deck tech on in our Mono Red Summit is Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs, and that's actually a big reason why I put this in here. If you've watched the gameplay there, you've seen that it's actually pretty interesting, making your opponent pay 3 to attack you, otherwise you get a creature. So I don't know, this could be interesting. Another big one that is with Braids of Fire is Aurelia's Fury. I just picture myself casting this off the Braids of Fire for a huge amount of mana, and then making none of my opponents be able to react to what I'm doing. And then also making none of their creatures be able to block. Like that, to me, is almost like a finisher, like an overrun. I'm interested to try it out and see what happens there. I think it's going to be a cool combination. Fight to Death, really cool card. I've never actually played with it before, but this is definitely going to be the time to shine for this one. It does something very interesting. It's being able to play with your opponent's combat, essentially. Even if they're not swinging, well, ideally if they're not swinging at you. So if two of your opponents are really going at each other, or even all three of them are going after each other, this could be a lot of fun, you know. Oh man, I can't wait to try this out. Jokel Hops, this is more on the red-white kind of rude side, I'd say. Land destruction is definitely something not a lot of people like to play with. And these decks included every once in a while. I think this one warrants it, just being able to flash my commander and give my team indestructible and then just yokel hops everything away. I think that's a pretty fun way to win, not for my opponents, but for me, but you got to close out the game sometime. We'll see what happens there. And we've got Fumigate for a little bit of life gain as well. With that, let's move on to spot removal here. There's a few new includes like Heart Piercer, Mana Core. I'm interested to try that card out. We'll see. I played it in Limited a little bit. It was a lot of fun. Angel of Sanctions, it's another new card. I like being able to cast it from the graveyard, you know, make a token of it. Once again, gets around Containment Priest because it is a token. Kind of theme that around that. Chaos Warp, we've talked about that a million times. Volcanic Offering, I've touched on that before too. Forsake the Worldly is another new Amonkhet card. I'm looking at it as kind of the budget version of Return to Dust. I like it because it's got cycling on it, which is pretty cool. So if I don't need it, I can just cycle it away. The fact that it's instant speed and exiles an artifact or enchantment is huge too. So it's a pretty cool card for, you know, being new and being kind of under the radar for the most part, I would think. In here, I included Nahiri as well. Nahiri is probably, you know, the best red-white planeswalker. I think she's the only. Yeah, she's the only red-white planeswalker. No, there's a Johnny. Sorry, I keep forgetting about him. But I would say she's still better than he is. She is making splashes in a lot of formats, which is really cool. And she definitely warrants her price tag. I almost picked up a second copy just for this deck, but I ended up just taking my one copy out of the other deck. Really cool card. I really, really like all the abilities, especially the last ability can really help in this deck. Just being able to like grab something and put it into play and then put it back in my hand. But it's going to be really cool. There's some pretty interesting ETB effects in here. Okay, so with that, we're moving on to the next section here. It's called Board Position. I wasn't really sure what else to call this, honestly, but there's a lot of like red-white lends itself to like combat strategies and stuff like that. So these are just a few cards that I kind of picked out to kind of help me in that kind of combat-oriented play, essentially. Angelic Field Marshal is a big one. It helps your commander. It helps herself. She gives, I believe, your team vigilance. Yeah.
+2 and vigilance.
Yep. So I mean, that can be pretty huge. She will make your creatures survive the Avacyn flip, so that's pretty big too. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of a different card. She will survive the Avacyn flip, and Avacyn will survive the flip, of course. And then, yeah, just interesting card. Another one is Angelic Skirmisher. I'm sure as soon as Greg sees this video, he's going to comment on it, because I told him a long time ago, well, not a long time ago, a few months ago, that I hated this card, and now after watching him play with it, I'm actually kind of sold on it. It does a lot for what it is. I mean, I didn't realize that it affected your opponent's turns as well. I always just assumed that it affected mine. And finally, I reread the card, and now I'm just like, huh, that's actually really good. So that's one that I'm looking to try out. It's kind of interesting. You guys get to see me like on like my test stage. So there's a few things in here that are obviously, you know, not battle tested. So if, you know, this might be a good opportunity to say this, if you guys see something in here that, you know, obviously isn't going to work, you know, comment on it. Also, if you have any suggestions, comment on it. This is, like I said, this is a new venture for me. I'm thinking this will work fine, but I have yet to play this deck, so we'll see what happens, really. Moving on from that, we've got Anya, Merciless Angel. I know I've tried to build a deck around this legendary creature before. She's interesting. She can make herself indestructible by just having an opponent's life total be lowered, I think half of their starting life total or something like that. And then she gets stronger for, you know, the closer you get everybody to that. And, you know, interesting card. Could be a commander on its own. I think it's better in the deck, personally. So, let's see. We've got things like Matter Reshaper, just something that you could block with and not care, or something that you could sacrifice to flip Avacyn. Emrakul of Promised, that's another big Eldrazi. Brian Stoutarm, that's, I think, one of our big sack outlets. I really want to get this guy and just lob, my creatures at somebody, especially if somebody's, actually going to Wrath and Avacyn's already on the board and I can't do the indestructible trick, stuff like that. Glory of Warfare. This is a really cool card. It not only buffs your creatures when they're attacking, but it also defends your creatures when it's not your turn. So I mean, it gives them +0/+2 on not your turn, which is really cool. Interesting enchantment. I've never played with it before. Really excited to try it out. Sneak Attack, on the other hand, I have played with a lot. This card can be played very defensively, and that's actually the way that I like to play it. It's a way to kind of trick people into, swinging at you, and then you just have a surprise blocker, and they just, yeah. Eric's pointing at himself right now. It's, I don't know, it does a lot for what it is, and it's a card that I recommend any deck that has red in it play, especially if you got some crazy creatures like Combustible Gearhulk. Just keeps coming up in my mind, like being able to throw that guy out there. Oh yeah, it's going to be amazing. But I mean, even like, I've done this before, like where you sneak attack into a Feldon, and then you just use Feldon to get something from your graveyard. Like, it gives it haste. Like, yeah, it's going to get sacrificed at the end of turn, but if you only need to use it right there, to save yourself or just finish somebody off, it can be, essential. Let's see. And then we've got like a few lands in here. Slayer's Stronghold, just a way to give your guy, I believe I gotta read the card.
Vigilance and +1?
Yeah.
And haste. +2/+2.
Okay, so that's what I was after, the haste part. Just a way to give some of your guys haste is big. Once again, not a card that I've played with before, which is probably why I'm flubbing a lot on, like, what does this card do? What? Sunharm Fortress of Legion. I know this is one that gives double strike, so that's a big one. If you're just a few points shy of finishing somebody off with Archangel Avacyn, that could be really good. Do you know, sorry, question for the producer here. Does the flip count for a different command damage? I wouldn't think so. I'm pretty sure it's the same creature, so it doesn't.
It's a brand new card.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, it does say Avacyn the Purifier, so maybe that's the case. So I don't know. That's an interesting thing. Comment on it and tell us where we're wrong on that. I think it would change it to where it would have to be a different commander set of damage, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then moving on from that, we've got Tutor. That is kind of white strength, and I would say red has a little bit of that too, but definitely white strength. I included Enlightened Tutor just because it's a way to get Braids of Fire, which, in the beginning, I essentially set aside 2 cards, and that was Archangel Avacyn and Braids of Fire. Later on, I may try and buff up the side of Braids of Fire, because it is one of the main themes that I was going after. I obviously thought of that while I was building it because it's a flash commander, but, so on and so forth. Gamble's another really big one. I know this card really actually just screws people over more than it actually helps them, but I think that's actually a lot of fun, so we'll see what happens there. Conduit of Ruin. Because of the 3 or so giant Eldrazi that I have in here, or even like the Angel of Dire Hour, like being able to make those creatures cost 2 less, one of those creatures cost 2 less is really big. Also being able to tutor up them is a huge thing. Like, I just picture myself grabbing, like, if I ever get the chance, I will grab an Ulamog for this deck, but for now, Kozlak or Emrakul will work. They're both great cards, and they can finish the game on their own. And then we've got a staple in red-white, in my opinion, because I have played this card a lot, and that's Sunforger. This card is ridiculous. I don't know why more people don't play it. It is insane. You can go grab your Boros Charm, you can go grab your removal. I could grab Wild Ricochet off of this thing. It is ridiculous. This card, I cannot talk about it enough. I have a Mardu deck that I play this in, and it has literally saved my butt a million times. Just being able to, if somebody goes for, one of those mass removals like Wrath of God, and just being able to take the Sunforge off, go grab your Boros Charm, make everything indestructible. It doesn't get better than that. And that's a real gotcha moment for most opponents too, because they don't realize that it does that. It's just like, wait, what? Like, ha, I gotcha. So anyway, with that, we're on to our dual lands. Once again, just a normal list. Like, we've got Boros Garrison, Boros Guildgate, Clifftop Tree, Command Tower, of course. You can't go wrong with that one. Needle Spires, Sacred Foundry, Windscarred Crag. The normal list. And I think there's 11 plains and 10 mountains in the deck. And that pretty much rounds it out. So once again, like I said, this is a new venture for me, Boros. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comment section. I will definitely listen to them on this one. I'm excited to play this deck maybe a little bit today or maybe next week. We'll see what happens. Of course, like, comment, subscribe as always, and we'll see you next time for another deck tech. Thanks, guys.